The schoolhouse loomed large in my memory, a menacing silhouette against the twilight sky. I had only been inside it once, years ago, on a field trip in elementary school. Even then it felt cold, unwelcoming. I remembered the echoing silence in the hallways, the musty smell of decay, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Now, years later, the building seemed to have taken on a more sinister aspect. The paint peeled from its walls like scabs, revealing the rotting wood beneath. Windows, once bright and inviting, were now dark, vacant eyes staring out at the world with a chilling emptiness. The playground, once a place of laughter and joy, stood desolate and overgrown, the rusted swings creaking mournfully in the wind. It was as if the very building itself was a living thing, slowly succumbing to some unseen blight. My parents, ever sensible and pragmatic, had warned me to stay away. There were whispers in town, stories told in hushed tones about the school's history, stories of strange occurrences, unexplained noises, and shadowy figures glimpsed through the broken windows. Some dismissed them as mere superstition, the ramblings of bored teenagers with overactive imaginations. But I knew better. There was something dark about that place, something that sent shivers down my spine and made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. As I walked towards the school that night, each step filled with a growing sense of unease, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into the jaws of something sinister. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. Shadows stretched long and thin, twisting familiar shapes into grotesque caricatures. The air grew colder, sharper, as if the very atmosphere itself was bracing for the coming darkness. I could feel my pulse quicken, my breath catching in my throat as I approached the school. The closer I got, the more oppressive the silence became. It wasn't a peaceful quiet, but a heavy, suffocating stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath my feet, and the frantic pounding of my own heart in my chest. I reached into my pocket, my fingers closing around the cold metal of my father's old flashlight. It offered little comfort. The air grew thick with the smell of decay and damp earth, a pungent aroma that spoke of neglect and forgotten things. I could hear the rustle of small creatures scurrying through the undergrowth, their unseen presence doing little to ease my growing unease. I paused at the edge of the schoolyard, my hand hovering over the rusted latch of the gate. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and for a moment I thought I saw a figure standing in the window of the schoolhouse, a dark silhouette framed against the dying light. I blinked, and it was gone. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the gate. The rusted hinges groaned in protest, the sound echoing through the stillness like a scream. It felt as if I was crossing a threshold into another world, a place where the normal rules no longer applied. The air grew noticeably colder, and I could feel a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, as if I was being watched. The schoolhouse loomed before me, a dark and silent monolith against the fading light. Its windows, now black and empty, seemed to stare back at me, filled with a cold, malevolent intelligence. I hesitated for a moment, every instinct screaming at me to turn back, to run while I still could. But something drove me forward, a strange mix of fear and morbid curiosity. I had come this far, I told myself, there was no turning back now. With a deep breath and a silent prayer, I stepped onto the overgrown path, each crunch of gravel beneath my feet sounding deafening in the stillness. The shadows seemed to deepen around me as I approached the schoolhouse, as if the very building itself was drawing in the darkness. I could feel a growing sense of dread in the pit of my stomach, a feeling that I was walking into something from which I might never escape. The heavy oak door yielded with a groan, as if disturbed from a long sleep. A wave of stale, stagnant air rushed out, thick with the scent of dust, mildew, and something faintly metallic like old blood. I coughed, covering my mouth with my sleeve, my stomach churning. The air inside was heavy, oppressive, as if the building itself was exhaling years of trapped darkness. Stepping inside, my flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating a scene of utter desolation. Cobwebs thick and gray draped everything like macabre tapestries. Dust lay heavy on the floor, undisturbed for years, perhaps decades. The air hung thick and silent, broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the frantic thud of my heart. The hallway stretched before me, seemingly endless in the dim light. Lockers, once brightly painted, now stood faded and rusted, their surfaces scratched and dented with age. Some hung open, their contents long since spilled out, revealing glimpses of forgotten textbooks and decaying gym clothes. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. Each step I took echoed through the empty corridor, the sound bouncing off the walls and returning to me distorted and amplified. It felt as if the building itself was listening, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved deeper into the school. The air grew colder, the silence more profound. I kept my flashlight beam moving, afraid of what might be lurking in the shadows just beyond its reach. There was a palpable sense of unease here, a feeling that I was treading on forbidden ground. I passed by classrooms, their desks overturned and covered in dust, chairs scattered across the floor as if in the aftermath of some sudden chaotic event. Blackboards, still bearing the faded scribbles of lessons long past, lined the walls, their surfaces cracked and grimy. A tattered alphabet chart clung precariously to the wall, its bright colors now muted with age and neglect. The silence was broken only by the creak of the floorboards beneath my feet and the occasional groan of the old building settling around me. But beneath these sounds I thought I could hear something else. A faint whisper, a soft sigh, a sound like someone, or something, breathing just at the edge of my hearing. I stopped, holding my breath, straining to listen. But the sound, if there ever was one, had vanished. Shaking my head, I told myself it was just my imagination, the product of nerves and the unsettling atmosphere of the place. Ahead, the hallway opened up into a large, cavernous space. My flashlight beam struggled to penetrate the gloom, revealing the outline of the school auditorium. Rows of seats, their velvet upholstery ripped and faded, stretched back into the darkness. The stage, once a platform for school plays and assemblies, now stood bare and dusty, illuminated only by a sliver of moonlight filtering through a crack in the boarded-up windows. A sense of foreboding washed over me as I stepped into the auditorium. The air here felt heavier, colder, as if the very space itself was imbued with some unseen presence. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I walked slowly down the aisle, my flashlight beam dancing across the rows of empty seats. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, and I thought I could detect a faint, sweet odor, like overripe fruit, mingling with the other smells. It was an unsettling combination, one that sent a shiver down my spine. As I reached the front of the stage, I noticed something lying on the floor. It was a child's doll, its porcelain face cracked and grimy, one eye missing, staring up at me with a disturbing intensity. The sight of the doll sent a jolt of fear through me. I bent down, picking it up gingerly, my fingers brushing against its cold, hard surface. It felt strangely heavy in my hand, as if it were filled with something more than just stuffing. As I turned the doll over in my hands, I thought I heard something. A faint giggle, high-pitched and childlike, seeming to come from somewhere behind me. I whirled around, my heart pounding in my chest, my flashlight beam sweeping across the empty auditorium, but there was nothing there. The seats were empty, the stage bare. The only sound was the creaking of the old building and the frantic thump of my own pulse. I stood there for a moment, frozen in place, listening intently. But the laughter, if it had ever been real, was gone. Had I imagined it? Was the oppressive atmosphere of the school playing tricks on my mind? I didn't know what to think, but one thing was certain. I was no longer alone in the deserted school. Something was here with me. something unseen, unheard, but undeniably present, and it was watching me. The laughter, though fleeting, had shaken me to my core. I needed to leave, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the auditorium. My flashlight beam darted around, searching for the exit. Finding the double doors I had entered through, I pushed them open and stumbled back into the hallway. A wave of dizziness washed over me, the hallway seeming to tilt and sway. I leaned against the wall, my hand pressed against the cold, damp plaster, trying to steady myself. The air felt thick and heavy, making it difficult to breathe. A strange metallic taste lingered in my mouth, the same faint tang I had noticed upon entering the school. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to move. I had to get out of this place, and quickly. But something compelled me towards the stairs at the end of the hallway. A dark, foreboding staircase leading up into the shadows of the second floor. Logic told me to turn back, to find another way out. Yet an unseen force, a morbid curiosity mixed with a growing sense of dread, drew me towards the stairs. One step at a time I ascended, each footfall echoing ominously in the silence. The second floor was shrouded in an even deeper darkness, the air thick with dust and the musty smell of decay. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing peeling paint, crumbling plaster and cobwebs hanging like macabre decorations. As I moved down the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind whistling through the broken windows, sent shivers down my spine. My hand trembled, the flashlight beam dancing erratically across the walls, creating fleeting shadows that seemed to writhe and contort. Suddenly, a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision. I whipped the flashlight around, my heart leaping into my throat. For a split second I thought I saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway, a tall shadowy form partially obscured by the darkness. But when the flashlight beam landed on the spot, there was nothing there, just an empty hallway and the unsettling silence that seemed to press in on me from all sides. Had I imagined it, my fear playing tricks on my senses? Or was there something else here, something that moved just beyond the reach of the light? Despite the growing unease that clawed at my insides, I pressed forward, drawn by an unknown force towards the far end of the hallway. There I found a door slightly ajar, a sliver of pale moonlight illuminating the sign above it. Principal's office. Hesitantly, I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest as if warning me away. The office was in a state of disarray, books and papers scattered across the floor, furniture overturned, as if someone had ransacked the place in a fit of rage. The air hung heavy with the smell of dust and decay, but there was another scent mingled in the air, something faintly sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit, the same scent I had noticed in the auditorium. It was overpowering in the confined space of the office, making my stomach churn. Stepping cautiously over a pile of broken glass, I made my way towards the large oak desk that dominated the room. The surface was covered in a thick layer of dust, but beneath it I could make out faint scratch marks, deep grooves etched into the wood as if by claws. A cold shiver ran down my spine. What had happened in this room? What kind of creature could have left such marks? My gaze fell upon a small, tarnished silver plaque on the front of the desk. Leaning closer, I brushed away the dust, revealing an inscription. Charles Blackwood, Principal, 1953 to 1968. Charles Blackwood. The name echoed in my mind, vaguely familiar. I had heard it before, whispered in hushed tones by the townspeople, linked to the dark rumors surrounding the school. Suddenly a memory flashed in my mind. I was a child again, sitting at the dinner table, listening to my grandmother recount local legends. They say Principal Blackwood, she had whispered, her voice low and conspiratorial, disappeared without a trace. Vanished into thin air one night, never to be seen again. Some say he's still there, trapped within those walls, his soul unable to find peace. At the time, I had dismissed it as nothing more than a spooky story, but now, standing in his abandoned office, the air thick with unease and the faint scent of decay, I wasn't so sure. The name Charles Blackwood seemed to pulsate on the plaque before me, a tangible link to the darkness that permeated the deserted school. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something sinister, something that I was never meant to find. Charles Blackwood. The name echoed in the silence of the office, a palpable weight settling upon my chest. It wasn't just a name, it was a key, unlocking a door in my mind to a vault of hushed whispers and half-forgotten stories. The townspeople, my grandmother, their warnings about the school, about Blackwood himself. They were not mere ghost stories, but warnings. The office, once seemingly ordinary, now felt different, charged with an unknown energy. My gaze swept across the room, taking in the disarray, the overturned furniture, the scattered papers, with a newfound dread. There was something else here, something hidden, something that didn't want to be found. As if guided by an unseen hand, I moved towards a towering bookshelf tucked away in a dark corner, its surface coated in a thick layer of dust. Gripping the edge, I pulled. The shelf groaned, resisting at first, then suddenly giving way, revealing a gaping maw of darkness behind it. A hidden room. Heart pounding against my ribs, I fumbled for the flashlight, its beam cutting through the oppressive darkness to reveal a small, cramped space, barely large enough to stand in. The air within was stagnant, ice-cold, and thick with the cloying scent of decay. But there was something else, something acrid and metallic, like old blood. Fear warred with a morbid curiosity, urging me forward. Taking a deep breath, I ducked under the shelf, entering the hidden room. The flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing a scene frozen in time. Old yellowed newspaper clippings covered every inch of the wall, their headlines screaming about disappearances, accidents, and strange occurrences, all centered around the school and Charles Blackwood. Drawings made by children, their once bright colors now faded and grotesque, depicted monstrous figures and shadowy forms, their childish innocence twisted into something dark and disturbing. And then, I saw it. A photograph, its edges curled and yellowed, pinned prominently in the center of the wall. It depicted Charles Blackwood, a gaunt figure with piercing eyes, standing on the steps of the school, surrounded by a group of children. Their faces, blurred in the photograph, seemed to be contorted in fear, their eyes wide with terror. A wave of dizziness washed over me and I thought I heard voices, whispers swirling around me, murmuring Blackwood's name, their tones laced with fear and accusation. The air grew colder, the shadows in the room seeming to deepen, pressing in on me. The flashlight slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor, plunging the room into darkness. Fear, raw and primal, surged through me, urging me to flee. I stumbled back, my hands outstretched, searching for the opening for escape, but my fingers brushed against something cold and hard. A book. It lay open on a small makeshift altar in the center of the room, its pages filled with handwritten text and strange symbols drawn in faded ink. The air around it crackled with a strange energy, and the cloying scent of decay intensified, making my eyes water. Driven by a compulsion I couldn't explain, I reached out, my fingers tracing the strange symbols in the book. As I touched the page, a wave of cold air washed over me, and the whispers intensified, swirling around me, forming words, phrases, fragments of a dark ritual. The words resonated deep within me, stirring something ancient and primal, a darkness that echoed the chilling secrets of the deserted school and the man who had once ruled its halls. I stumbled back, my mind reeling, the full weight of what I had stumbled upon crashing down on me. This wasn't just a school. It was a place of power, a nexus of dark energy, and Charles Blackwood, far from being a harmless old principal, had been something far more sinister. He had been a conduit, a master of the darkness that clung to this place. Panic surged through me, a desperate need to escape the suffocating confines of the hidden room, the school, the suffocating darkness that seemed to be closing in on me. I spun around, searching for the opening, but the bookshelf, once easily moved, now felt as immovable as a mountain. I threw myself against it, pushing, shoving, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, mocking my fear, their icy fingers trailing across my skin, pulling me deeper into the darkness. I was trapped. A cold metallic hand closed around my arm, its grip like a vice. I screamed, a primal sound of terror that echoed through the empty school, but the sound seemed to be swallowed by the walls, absorbed by the darkness. Turning, I found myself face to face with a figure that materialized from the shadows, its features obscured by the gloom. But I didn't need to see its face to know who it was. The piercing eyes, filled with a cold, malevolent intelligence, were unmistakable. Charles Blackwood, or whatever remained of him, had returned, and I, the foolish intruder, had become his prisoner. Blackwood's grip tightened on my arm, sending a jolt of icy pain that shot up to my shoulder. His touch was not entirely human, colder than the grave, sending shivers down my spine that had nothing to do with the chill in the air. The darkness around him seemed to pulsate, a living entity responding to his presence. "You shouldn't be here," a voice rasped, as if from the bottom of a well, ancient and filled with untold sorrow. Blackwood's face, barely visible in the gloom, contorted into a grotesque parody of a smile, revealing teeth that glinted unnaturally sharp in the darkness. I tried to pull away, but his grip was ironclad, his strength inhuman. Panic surged through me, choking me, turning my thoughts into a chaotic jumble. The whispers intensified, no longer mere whispers but voices, children's voices, chanting Blackwood's name, their tone filled with a chilling reverence. "You seek answers," Blackwood's voice echoed, drawing closer, his rancid breath washing over my face. "But some truths are best left buried." Terror so profound it bordered on the surreal threatened to consume me. I was trapped, not just physically, but within the grasp of something ancient and evil, something that reeked of despair and fed on fear. The darkness around us swirled, taking on shapes, faces, their features contorted in silent screams. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the visions away, but they only intensified, seeping under my eyelids, branding themselves onto the back of my mind. Images flashed before me. Children, their eyes vacant black pits, their skin pallid, their lips tinged with an unnatural blue. They danced around Blackwood, their movements jerky and unnatural, their laughter devoid of joy, filled with a hollow, echoing emptiness. "They crave release," Blackwood whispered, his voice a low growl that seemed to vibrate deep within my bones. "And you, boy, will be the key." He threw back his head and let out a chilling laugh, a sound that echoed the torment of 1,000 souls. I understood then. Blackwood, in his pursuit of power, in his twisted rituals, had opened a door, a gateway to something dark and hungry. He had become a prisoner of his own ambition, bound to this place, forced to appease the appetites of the creatures he had unleashed. Blackwood dragged me deeper into the school, his grip unrelenting. We passed classrooms transformed into macabre playgrounds, desks overturned, chairs broken, the walls defaced with disturbing drawings, childish scribbles infused with a terrifying knowledge. And then I saw them. The children. They emerged from the shadows, their eyes fixed upon me, their expressions a chilling mix of hunger and anticipation. They were no longer the innocent faces from the photograph, but something else, something twisted and wrong. Their features blurred, their limbs elongated, their movements unsettlingly fluid. Their cold, clammy hands reached for me, their touch sending shivers down my spine. They whispered my name, their voices a chorus of despair, pleading with me, threatening me, their words a jumbled cacophony of need and rage. Blackwood, his face alight with a terrifying glee, pushed me towards them. "They need a new playmate," he hissed, his voice dripping with malice, "a new soul to appease their hunger." I stumbled back, my heart pounding against my ribs like a drumbeat of doom. The children closed in, their cold, lifeless eyes boring into mine, their touch sending waves of terror through me. I was surrounded, trapped, with nowhere to run, no escape from the nightmare unfolding around me. Blackwood's laughter echoed through the empty halls, a sound that spoke of madness and despair. The school, once a place of learning, now a tomb, resonated with the energy of 1,000 tormented souls. As the children closed in, their touch sending waves of icy cold through me, I knew then that there would be no escape, no reasoning with the darkness that had claimed this place, and the man who had become its prisoner. My screams, when they finally came, were swallowed by the walls, a final, desperate plea for mercy unheard and unanswered. The darkness consumed me, and in that final moment of terror, I understood the true meaning of Blackwood's words. Some truths are best left buried. The suffocating darkness pressed down on me, a crushing weight attempting to extinguish the last embers of my sanity. The children's icy touch, their hollow whispers, Blackwood's chilling laughter, it all swirled around me, a vortex of terror threatening to drag me under. Then, just as suddenly as the darkness descended, a pinprick of light pierced the oppressive gloom. It flickered at the edge of my vision, a faint beacon in the sea of shadows. My heart, moments ago a frantic drum against my ribs, stuttered, caught between the grip of terror and the fragile hope offered by that sliver of light. It grew stronger, pushing back the darkness, revealing the outline of the hallway, the grotesque shadows receding like phantoms banished by the dawn. The children's voices, so clear and menacing just moments ago, faded, replaced by a low, mournful wail that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the school. My legs, heavy and unresponsive, found a new resolve, a primal urge to escape the clutches of the nightmare that had ensnared me. With a surge of adrenaline, I stumbled towards the light, the echoes of Blackwood's laughter fading with each desperate step. The light resolved itself into the beam of a flashlight, its harsh glare momentarily blinding as I stumbled out of the darkness and into the relative safety of the hallway. Voices, human voices, cut through the oppressive silence, their tones laced with concern and a palpable relief that sent a tremor through my body. "Over here! I found him!" a voice boomed, echoing through the hallway. Two figures rushed towards me, their faces etched with worry, their eyes widening in alarm as they took in my disheveled appearance. Strong arms reached out, steadying me, guiding me towards the light. I recognized them then, friends from the group, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and horror. They had come looking for me, their earlier bravado replaced with genuine concern when I hadn't reappeared at dawn. "What happened? Are you all right?" one asked, his voice trembling, his eyes searching mine for answers I wasn't sure I could provide. I wanted to speak, to tell them of the horrors I had witnessed, of the darkness that had ensnared me. But the words wouldn't come. The terror, still fresh, clung to me like a shroud, rendering me speechless. They led me out of the school, away from the oppressive darkness that seemed to cling to the building like a curse. The night air, crisp and cool, filled my lungs, each breath a victory against the suffocating atmosphere within those walls. As I stumbled through the schoolyard, the first rays of dawn painting the sky in hues of purple and orange, I cast one last glance back at the deserted schoolhouse. Even in the growing light of day, it seemed to exude an air of menace, its windows like vacant eyes watching our retreat. The events of the night, the terror, the madness, the ghostly children, and the chilling presence of Charles Blackwood, they were seared into my mind, a dark stain that I knew would never fully fade. As we reached the edge of the schoolyard, I noticed something strange. My reflection in the window of a nearby car seemed different. My eyes, once filled with youthful exuberance, now held a haunted, knowing look. And there, at the edge of my vision, I could have sworn I saw a flicker of movement, a shadowy figure standing just out of sight, its eyes fixed upon me with a chilling intensity. I blinked, and it was gone. The deserted schoolhouse faded into the background as we drove away, but the terror lingered, a constant companion that whispered doubts into my mind, reminding me of the darkness that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. The experience had changed me, left me with a profound understanding of the fragility of sanity, the seductive allure of fear, and the chilling realization that some doors, once opened, can never be truly closed. I never spoke of what I saw that night, not to my friends, not to my family. They wouldn't understand. They couldn't understand. The memory of the deserted schoolhouse, the ghostly children, and the chilling presence of Charles Blackwood, it remained with me, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks at the edge of our world, waiting for the unwary, the curious, the foolish to stumble within its grasp. And as the years passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the darkness I had glimpsed within those walls had followed me home, its icy fingers forever tracing the edges of my sanity, waiting for the moment when it could once again claim me as its own.